Greetings and welcome to Sisterly Soul Stories. This is Erica Dotson, and I am so grateful that you decided to join us again today. If you missed last week's episode, I encourage you to listen to it at your leisure, but I am incredibly excited about our guest today. Reverend Christopher Moore is the pastor of the New Mount Calvary Baptist Church here in Houston. He's also a husband, father, mentor, friend, but most importantly, man of God. And so I wanted to invite him on as we continue in our series entitled, What About the Women? As we discover how women enter the space of ministry, no matter what space that the Lord is calling them to. So I want to welcome and thank Reverend Christopher Moore for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, I was so grateful when you said yes.
Yeah.
I knew it had been a while since we had spoken.
Sure.
I knew some wonderful things were going on in your life and in your ministry, and I wanted to invite you on to share with our audience today.
Yeah, I'm incredibly elated to be here and glad to connect with you again, Eric. It has been a while, but really grateful for what the Lord is doing in your life as well. And this podcast is absolutely amazing. So I'm just thankful I could be a part of it.
Yeah, and thank you. And I want to publicly thank you for the opportunities you've extended to me to work alongside you in ministry and work with your leaders and your team and speaking your conference. It was definitely a blessing, a blessed blessing. And I wish continued success in your ministry.
Thank you.
So at the outset, whenever I have a guest, I like to start the conversation with asking, how are you doing? Like really doing? And what are you doing to care for yourself during this very difficult time in our world?
Yeah, I'm probably in one of the best spaces I've been in. The pandemic helped stretch me a lot, helped grow me a lot, helped see myself in a different light, helped me be really honest about some things with myself, ministry wise and personally. And, I use this analogy in Bible study. None of us like traffic in Houston, but we see all of these construction sites and we get upset about the detours and the delays, but actually construction is for the best. It's something that needs to be improved upon. And that's how I kind of look at my life daily as a construction site. It's in need of God stripping away some stuff and some areas, some things I need to be better about, as a husband, a father, a pastor, a sibling, all of those types of things. And so I'm really in a great space. Eric, I'll be completely honest with you. One of the things that I wish that I had more people tell me in seminary was to cultivate a devotional life. We become so good at ministry. We learn the processes and methodologies, but we don't ever actually take care of our souls. And, I'm afraid that a lot of people in our space are going to be very major in proclamation, in ministry, work, and administration, but will fail spiritually. And that's been life-changing for me. I had to have some people really tell me, like, you need to have a devotional life. It's one thing to write a sermon, a Bible study, a revival. That stuff matters. But if you're not taking care of yourself spiritually on a daily basis, at some point you never have anything to give. And that's been huge for me. Like preaching wise, this has been the best groove I've been in, like for a 2.5 year stretch that I can remember in almost 16 years of preaching now. And it just boils down to taking that time daily to spend some time with God and to read the word devotionally. I know homiletics and I know hermeneutics and all this stuff. I can preach and teach, but I need to be able to be ministered to myself. And that is not always accessible to us.
Mm-hmm.
We give and we give and we give, but we don't always have someone pouring into us. So that's been huge for me. Just that spiritual relationship that's been cultivated. Um, obviously, my life was a lot more complicated as than it was a couple of years ago with, being married now, having a family, having a new baby. I've had to grow up in a lot of areas. When you're by yourself, you can kind of do some things. You can kind of, you can make a mistake or you can be a little selfish, but that doesn't fly. once you have a family that you are actually the priest of your home as well. And so the pandemic was really, really good to get to learn more about my family. My daughter was in virtual school for pretty much all of the pandemic up until this year. So she and I had a lot of time to spend together. She saw how much I did not know about math, science, and history, and all that stuff. But we grew. Our bond grew during that time, and so that has been huge for me. There's always things you can do better. My wife and I have been trying to make out a schedule to work out. She's more paranoid about post baby weight and all that kind of stuff. And I keep telling her, trust me, it ain't that bad.
Yeah.
But she and rightfully so. We all have to take care of ourselves. But so we're doing that, trying to figure out what's going to be the best time to do this. We're trying to get Grayson out a little bit more now, so he can be acclimated to the outside world, taking him slow, but we know that he needs to be aware of certain things, and so we're getting there with that, but just trying to find that time, or make that time rather, to really improve physically as well. But overall, I'm doing really well, just in a really, really good space. And now, does that mean that everything is easy? Absolutely not. We both know that. Ministry is a struggle. Marriage is hard work. You work, you try to make sure your baby's fed, and making sure he's getting everything he needs, making sure our daughter's getting everything she needs. So that's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. But I would say beginning with my own personal devotional time has kind of helped me navigate through all of that more effectively.
I want to thank you for being so transparent there and giving such a full, well-rounded answer to that question. I'm very grateful. I'm glad first to hear you have given it so much thought and are actually putting things in place to take care of yourself. I heard T.D. Jakes say years ago that if you give out, if you're a leader, if you're a servant, if you're a minister, that you should have at least 7 streams of replenishment poured back into your life. And I remember at that time thinking, 7? 7 from where, And I really struggled to, figure out how do you replenish yourself and then stay balanced and not feel guilty about taking too much me time or focus too much on yourself with the heavy weight of ministry hanging over your head. And so for me, the pandemic 2020, everything was it was a time of great transition for me. I experienced loss on a number of levels, but also really began to have some mental health challenges. And that was very difficult for me. But I think during that time also, like you say, you kind of stop and say, okay, I've prayed for everybody else. I poured into everyone else. Let me make sure that me and my relationship with the Lord is solid and strong. And I began to really spend time, fervent time, in prayer. And I tell people all the time, there were many times I didn't have words, but I just sat in God's presence in order for him to pour back into me. And I'm a different person as a result of that time, and I think that the Lord allowed time to stop. And so, in some respects, for the church, for ministers, for those called to take care of others, to reset, because we didn't have a choice. We had to sit in the house.
Had to.
Had to, and so we had to figure out alternative ways to fill ourselves. And I think the people that we serve now will be better as a result of it.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, one of the things that I took very seriously was, and I'm unapologetic about this, and one of my best friends in the world is Pastor Halley. We made a point to see a therapist, get some counseling, to be able to just unload and decompress on a weekly, bi-weekly, whatever, a consistent basis. And I think that's been huge. That was really the starting point for me, realizing how much I needed to take better care of myself. And so, along with that, and just having good people to talk to, you look for people who are going to be honest, and people who are going to be transparent, and will call you out, tell you if you're wrong, but also encourage you if you're right. And so, kind of creating those boundaries, and having that time where you can kind of decompress has been huge for me, because sometimes it's not always personal. Sometimes I do want to talk about church, but sometimes I don't want to talk about church, and so that's been huge. Eric, I think one of the biggest things for me, and I know we'll talk more about this as we go, one of the biggest things for me is I learned in getting a family that I needed to make sure that I always made my family a priority. And so I'm at this point now where if I don't make something, at the expense of being with my family, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. I have, and this is just because of circumstances. I've probably missed more funerals in the last couple of years due to family obligations that I would not have missed. And it's no slight to families.
Yeah.
But if there was something that I already had scheduled, I had one of the hard things for me to do. I had an elderly member pass away, and my aunt's 80th birthday celebration was scheduled that same day. And it was going to be tight for me to try to do both. And so I chose going to celebrate with my aunt. My aunt is my mom's only sister. So she's like a mother to me. So, I wasn't going to miss that, but just realizing that it's okay if you don't make a Zoom meeting. It's okay if you don't make it to every little thing that goes on. It's okay. And so that's been interesting for my congregation, who's kind of used to me being at everything, not maybe seeing me as much at certain things. I still, it's my obligation to be at everything that I can, but I try not to overextend myself, because I realize this now. They're gonna, they can live without me. And at some point they're going to have to live without me. But it's okay. Just accepting some things, setting some more boundaries, and things like that have been a great learning tool for me.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, setting those important boundaries.
Yeah.
Setting those boundaries. Therapy certainly helps with that.
Definitely.
To release the guilt of not being able to please everyone.
Most definitely.
being there for everyone, but the people that are most important in your life, trying to make sure that you show up for them
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
you have opportunity.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
So let's just jump right into it. And we've
Sure.
kind of alluded to some of the things
Mm-hmm.
that I want to touch on. But
Yeah.
first, I would love to know about your younger life, how your faith was formed, and what it was like when you accepted your call to ministry. So just kind of
Yeah.
talk us through and bring us up in 60 seconds.
Okay. I'll do that. I'll do that. Oh, well, it all start it all started in the country in East Texas. Uh, so I'm the youngest of five, and I have three older sisters, one older brother. We did church. We grew up at church. Still at my home church. My nephew is actually the pastor of our home church.
Okay.
My Most of my immediate family is still there in that church. My brother and one of my uncles is a deacon there. My aunt is there. Two of my sisters there. One of them is the musician. One of them is the church clerk. So we're heavily involved in ministry at home church. So that was just in me. I knew from a young age that the Lord had a call on my life to preach. I started out preaching like bootlegging back when I was like 4 or 5. That was my thing. I was standing up on stuff and preaching. So it was just always in me. I didn't officially accept my call to the ministry, and I wanted to preach. Now, that's one of the things I wanted to preach, but I ran for a long time. So I accepted my call to preach back in 2006. 2006, and it scared me to death. Because I know I'm not. I want to preach, but I know I'm not prepared. I'm not adequate enough to do it as much as I want to do it. So I had a decision to make. It was either go to law school, which I was pre-law, and or go to seminary. Well, the Lord closed every single door for law school. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I want to be a sports agent. I'm a huge sports fan. I wanted to get into the business of managing athletes and negotiating contracts. That's what I wanted to do. The Lord closed all those doors. He opened up the door to DTS. And that's where I went. I had been preaching a year before I moved to Dallas. And I knew that I knew I needed training if I was going to be effective. My nephew and I joke a lot. For that 1 year, I was the hottest thing in East Texas, because everybody knew I was going to preach. And,
Yeah.
I was doing the revivals and the youth conferences and the citywides and all that kind of stuff. I had East Texas locked up. But once I got to seminary, I realized that I was not a good preacher. And so, so I hate to even go back and listen to some of this stuff and even read some of the stuff that I preached back then.
Yeah.
I still have to ask the Lord forgiveness for stuff. Just, you listen, you put a few points on a poem, put a little song before
Little
and
song
after,
at the end.
tune it up. You're gonna satisfy a lot of people in
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
places
Come
like
on.
that.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to get some training. Probably my biggest one of my biggest influences happened preaching wise, in at least trying to explore exposition, was through my mentor, Pastor Gaines, who pastors here in Houston. And he used to do a revival for us back home. And he was doing exposition. I had never seen of it, heard of it. And I was like, man, I said, when I start preaching, this is a teenager. Like, I want to do this. Like, I want to do that. And so I started trying to, try to talk about what I stood up and read.
Yeah.
Once I got to seminary, I kind of learned how to work through that a little bit better practically. But preaching has just always been in me. It just always has. So that was my young ministry life. I came up as a singer. That's what I was doing, as a boy. But I always knew I had this call to preach and pastor. I had a lot of good influences growing up, as far as preaching was concerned. My pastor in Dallas, who I spent the majority of my early preaching ministry, Dr. Nash, that's where I met Pastor Hallie, at Mount Tabor.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Tabor, is a special place because they have always been very instrumental in the growth of young preachers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you name it, anybody that we know of today has passed through Mount Tabor.
Okay.
Everybody from Dr. West to Pastor Anderson to Dr. Haynes, Dr. Denny Davis. Anybody that went to Bishop at some point went to Mount Tabor and preached. And so the fact that I could come up in that type of group, in that type of congregation was huge for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I was learning seminary wise, and then what I was just kind of born and bred in me, was kind of married together at Mount Tabor. Mm-hmm. And so that was a huge part of my ministry growth. And, frankly, Pastor Gaines letting me come preach here monthly, that was giving me, a different taste of ministry. And finally coming here, that's been huge for me.
So it's awesome to hear, first of all, about your transition to seminary, and also that you had some wonderful mentors that poured into you. As you think about your ministry now, what is your uniqueness? What is your thumbprint? Every ministry or every pastor has something that is uniquely significant to the imprint that God calls them to make. So what do you think yours is in this time?
I would definitely think that just being able to have the type of personality that can communicate the gospel in many, many different types of settings, any platform. I'm pretty versatile enough. Just when you've been in it now for almost 16 years, you've kind of seen it. You've kind of been different places, but for the Lord to allow my personality to come out of my preaching and not have to water it down, not have to restrain it or anything like that. I'm pretty much going to sound the same wherever I am. So if it's an older crowd, if it's a younger crowd, if it's in the country, in the city, no matter what the demographic, the Lord's just kind of given me a really, really unique gift to be able to minister to different demographics and be effective. One of the things that I learned from the pandemic was application, how to be more personal in my preaching. And of course, when you have life events, you have more experience to talk about certain things. But that was really, preaching to a camera in our praise team and media ministry for 2 years. That kind of taught you a lot about preaching, that you couldn't rely on call and response. And if you look for it, you probably weren't going to get it. not like you used to.
Be kind of quiet.
Yeah. So learning to be okay. Learn to be okay with being who I am, and just being grateful for my style of preaching. I'm an expositor. I'm learning how to tailor my style to a broader generation. Now, I think that's one of the things that has helped me grow over the course of the years. But the Lord just blessed me to be able to communicate the gospel in a simple way that people can know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's a blessing, because that means more people through your ministry have access.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if our words are too lofty, or our illustrations too high-minded, may lose people,
right. Right. Right.
And so to be able to go into different settings and different platforms, be able to communicate in a way that people can hear and receive is so impactful. It just for me means that your ministry is going to expand and be, touching people far and wide. And so after 16 years, right, I'm sure you have seen a lot of shifts. And
Yes.
we are in a huge shift right now on a
Mhm.
number of fronts. Like we've talked about, folks not coming inside the building,
Mhm.
people choosing to be online worshipers, but also women stepping up from the shadows to the forefront. Now
Mhm.
that's not a new idea, but we're
Right.
seeing it in mass right now.
Right.
I partly believe it's because the pandemic kind of removed some barrier because now, folks can get online.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
You can start your church virtually.
Yeah,
You don't
definitely.
need
Most
startup
definitely.
money. You don't need permission
Most
from
definitely.
anybody.
Mhm.
And people are just being very unique and creative in the ways that they are reaching people, which I think the pandemic spurred that along. But while women are doing some amazing things in ministry, everyone isn't happy about it.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about that tension. Why do you think that tension is right now?
Yeah, Eric, I've honestly been thinking about that
Mhm.
since we kind of launched this occasion for this conversation. And you know what comes back to me, and I'll frame it, but I'll lead with this statement.
Mhm.
There, we have we in the church, particularly men, have a huge misunderstanding about biblical order and chauvinism.
Mm,
Uh, I think you can be biblically in order, but not be a chauvinist.
yeah.
And I think and I think we're trying to mask biblical order with chauvinism, misogynism, and things like that. And frankly, that's not been the story of the Bible.
Mhm.
Uh, Women have been very, very prominent throughout the Bible, serving and leading in ministry. They are very prominent even today,
Mhm.
because if you look at most of our churches, that is the majority of who make up our churches.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and so we've missed the mark with mistaking that, and I'm really grateful that you have opened this discussion. I tell my church all the time, and they know exactly where I'm coming from. You know what? Everybody's not called to preach,
Mhm.
but we're all called to do some preaching,
Yeah.
you know. And so we have to stop being so rigid and so sensitive
Mhm.
about what the Bible says. Like, we're to respect the gifts of one another. And that's not so always an easy pill to swallow, because just in case the Lord places a woman in some type of leadership capacity in ministry, then that probably means that I got to give up my spot.
Mhm.
That means I got to let go of some kind of power that I think I have.
Mhm.
And instead of looking at it as God has gifted this individual, male or female,
Mhm.
to serve in this capacity,
Mhm.
instead of looking at it that way, we want to start putting them in boxes and saying, this is what they are relegated to this. They cannot do this. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, we I believe there are people who believe in divine order who are not chauvinists. I tell people all the time, if it weren't for my mom and the impact that she had on my life, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Mhm.
And I know for a fact my mom knew the Lord. She was the one who had some of the toughest conversations with me about
Mhm.
my faith, and about ministry, and about the seriousness of preaching. Not to say that my dad didn't have an impact on my life, because he did, but I've got some very, very instrumental people in my life who have helped me in ministry.
Yeah.
who were women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even in my church, and this, working with a lot of my leaders, I have some very, very gifted women in our church that lead and serve, and who are willing to take the reins and to do whatever is necessary to advance the kingdom. And I think it's good. Listen, we need men in leadership. We need to lead as God has ordered us to lead.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't be chauvinist. We can't be biased and all of those types of things, because that's not Christ-like. So I think that's where the tension, we got some insecurity issues.
Some insecurity. Say it ain't so. No.
Of course not us.
Say it ain't so.
Of course
So you
not
mean to tell me that people may think that if I allow a woman to take this spot, that it won't be space for me? Is that
Oh yeah.
what I'm hearing?
Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and we are territorial. Oh no, we are territorial. We are prideful to a fault. A lot of us in church, and and if we looked at things differently,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that I mentioned to our church on Sunday, we like to claim this as our church, our space.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to say who can and who can't be
Mm-hmm.
saved, who can't be included, who can't be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And we're ruining a lot of precious opportunities to minister and be ministered to.
Yeah.
And I think some of our views on women in ministry actually run away some good people, who could really be helping us really strive for the sake of the gospel and advance the kingdom. I had, when I was out on, I guess you can call this paternity leave.
Okay.
When the baby got here, the majority of, like, my Bible study still rocked on, and the majority of my subs were some of my women. My women's leader, my Christian ed leader, they did a phenomenal job. And I don't know how people always take that. We at our church, we've got a mixture of classes and things like that, where we have crossover, where we have some women teaching co-ed classes. One of my most popular classes before the pandemic was Walk Through the Bible. That was probably our largest class, and we had a phenomenal teacher who was leading that class. And so, we're just now kind of getting back to Sunday school, but that's been some fruitful time. We've had a mixture of people leading, those settings, and it's been huge. When you came and did our training for our leaders, I know how that can be. That can be a little uncomfortable for certain people who are frozen, as far as their mindset is concerned. But my thing is, listen, if I'm bringing somebody to help advance the kingdom, then we should be respectful of that individual's gifts.
Yeah.
And we should pray that the Lord make us available to that which is being given to us. But we don't always look at it like that.
And I will say, it's always evident in what a church is being taught by how they treat guests. And I would say I've always felt welcome and received well, teaching that I was afforded the opportunity to do with your teams. And that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes about their ability to connect with this current generation, the time that we're in. And then the openness as it relates to evangelism, because what happens is if you're in a fixed mindset, and you're closed off to different individuals of different genders and races and from spaces in life to come in, sometimes it could be a hindrance, So along those lines, and you shared already, but just let's talk about other ways that you open doors or affirm women in ministry in your personal ministry, or even in the work that you do in the community.
Oh yeah. We have a ton of leaders in ministry who are leading. We, like my Christian ed director, some of my decision making uh, ministries are very, very well represented by women. Our food bank ministry is is led by women. And so some of those key ministries, like our hospitality and greeters and things like that, we we've done we have a really good mixture. And for the most part, we don't really catch static for that. And on occasion, you may
Mhm.
catch a little static for certain things, but we've I think we've navigated through that pretty well for the most part, to where gender does not come up as much as it possibly could some other place. And I just think that again, it kind of goes back to my upbringing, and even even back in the country, my I come from a pretty staunch, strict Baptist upbringing, but we had women who were very, very prominent
Mhm.
back then. And just seeing like the faith of my mom and my aunt, I constantly think of what Paul told Timothy. Listen, I've seen Lois and Eunice, and I believe that the faith that they've been imparted, they will impart to you as well. And that's how I feel. I've
Mhm.
had some really, really, really strong women in my life that have helped me along the way. A lot of men as well that have taken up time with me. So I think when we look at it big picture wise, I would hope that we could work together much better than what we do at
Yeah.
times.
And so like you said, like big picture wise,
Mhm.
seeing the impact, seeing how it can work well and how
Yeah,
effective different ministries are when we come together and work as a spiritual unit. How
yeah,
do we overcome this tension that exists? How can we bring our other brothers and sisters along on this journey, to try to encourage them to think differently, to open their minds and their hearts to women leading alongside them?
yeah. I think very, very clear, concrete conversations through the word.
Mhm.
Um, I just read through a piece of Philippians 1, 27 the other day. And, Paul is basically saying that we have to be of one spirit and of one mind. Like, we got to stand firm for the gospel. We got to strive together for the gospel.
Yeah.
That's inclusive.
Mhm.
And I think seeing the world as it is, Erica, man, we got so much to contend with
Mhm.
these days. Like, I mean, we really don't know if we're gonna leave home one morning and make it home that evening.
So true.
We got so much to contend with.
Mhm.
And and it's a shame that we don't look at the big picture and
Yeah.
see that we're really not battling against ourselves. Like, we've got an enemy. It's not that person who was sitting next to us on the pew.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much bigger fish to fry. There's some eternal things that are hanging in the balance, and
Yeah.
if we don't become unified,
Mhm.
we're going to see this world in much worse shape than it's in before it's over.
Mhm.
You know, and so I think being very intentional in in and I think I think one of the things that runs people off, or we don't understand,
Mhm.
and you've set the stage. Like, there are other areas of ministry that women serve other than preaching.
Yeah.
Like, uh, there are a lot of men that probably shouldn't preach. And I tell people this all the time. Everybody can do it, but they shouldn't. And that's
Tell the truth.
everybody shouldn't. And so we, even with that, I think just saying, listen, this is about the kingdom, and we're going to have respect for one another's gifts, and we're going to serve together. That's really what I'm trying to get our church to see. That's what I'm trying to get us to see. This whole evolution church mantra is evolving together through Christ. And that means not that we change our methodologies or our message rather, but we start looking at how can we do things differently. How can we do things better? Not just differently, but how can we do them better? And I think looking at it big picture wise instead of being closed-minded, I think would be helpful in that. And so we're a work in progress.
As all of us are.
I am too. and then I am too. But the Lord is incredibly kind and gracious to us. And I think when he sees that we're really, really moving in his will, he softens hearts and he allows us to have those conversations that we can have to be more effective.
Yeah. Yes,
he
does. So I just have one more question. I've enjoyed this time.
Yeah, me too.
A few more minutes left.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Just offer a word of encouragement to the women who are striking out and who are continuing on doing the work God has called them, may have faced some adversity and some challenge, but are committed to the call on their lives.
Yeah, you know what? I will say this to anyone that is listening to this. If you are very earnest in your desire to serve the Lord, he will prepare the exact space and capacity in which you will serve. Does that make it easier? No, it doesn't. Because even me, being a pastor, being a male, I have my own spaces where I'm not always welcome. But I'm learning to not get upset about that. The Lord has somewhere for me. That was the story of me coming here. If y'all really, I don't even have them anymore. If y'all could see all of the rejection letters I got from churches saying, we thank you, but we're going in a different direction, you would probably be floored. I almost did not even submit a resume to New Mount Calvary because I just had a really, really weird church politic kind of search process that went awry. I was certain that was the place where God wanted me, and he said no. And so I almost didn't even submit a resume to the church where I currently pastor. So one of the things my pastor always told me back home, my father in the ministry always said, even during when I was going through this process, he said, Chris, the Lord always has a prepared people for a prepared person. Yeah. And so continue to cultivate your gifts. One of the things that people don't understand about Paul when he was called to be an apostle was that he took 3 years or so of training, just time where he just spent time with God and God worked on him. God continued to refine him. And when it was time for him to make his move, the Lord had already charted the path for him to do so. So don't look at this time as a period of where you're being marginalized. And in some cases, it could be. I know I've been knowing our people too long. It can be.
Yeah.
But look at your affliction, your persecution differently. This is an opportunity where God is growing you up for a reason. And he has a prepared place for the individual that is prepared. So continue to seek those opportunities, continue to surround yourself with positive people, and those opportunities will come. Like I'm never asking anybody to go preach. Never. And I don't anticipate that starting.
Yeah.
Now. I just always believe that if I prepare myself, the Lord will always provide where I need to be when I need to be there. So just remain prayerful and remain prepared and remain patient, and you'll be exactly where God wants you to be.
Remain prayerful, prepared, and patient.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much,
No, thank
Reverend
you.
Christopher Moore.
Thank you. It's been a joy. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. And thank all of you for joining us again this week. I hope that something was said that will encourage you along your way, that will enlighten you and uplift you. If you would like to reach out to Pastor Moore or myself, if you have questions, please feel free to leave comments in the section below, as well as DM, and we will get back with you in a timely manner. But until the next time we meet, God bless you, be safe, and take good care.